Welcome to another episode of Canopy Practice Success. I am Casey Brothers, the host. I'm here today with Brittany Malidore. Welcome, Brittany.
Hello, hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a bit cloudy here in Washington, but winter is upon us.
It is. We're in the thick of it, aren't we? Go ahead and give an introduction of yourself to the listeners here today.
Yeah, no, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Malidore, the co-founder and managing partner of Ledgerly Consulting, which is a firm I launched about 4 years ago that does accounting, tax, and audit services. And then separately, I have kind of my own company, which focuses on branding, e-learning, all things that are just not actual technical accounting. So I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. Today you shot over a suggested topic that took me by surprise, that I have not heard talked about by anyone else, and am so curious to just have this discussion. And the topic was bullying in the workplace. Um, Tell us a little bit about why this is such a sensitive topic to you, or timely, or something you feel like needs to be talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about bullying, we always think about playground bullying, right? Like I was on the playground as a kid and I got like pushed by Jimmy Joe, right? And that was not nice of him. Over my time in accounting, and particularly this year after my major accident, I really started reflecting on, who I am and why I do things the way I do, or why do I feel the way that I do. After my car accident, I had a moment of, I feel like if I had died, that I would not have had a community there. And that was really big feelings, right? Like to
Pause.
say,
Do we
hey,
need to back up and talk about this accident?
no, I was just driving to pick up my daughter, and in a split second, I was T-boned.
No.
And unfortunately, 8 days later, I woke up. I did not know how to speak. I didn't know how to walk. It was pretty scary for my family, but honestly, the best thing that has happened to me and my family, because I think I was on autopilot. I didn't, going through life feeling the way that I was feeling. And so after the accident, I really reflected about what's most important to me, what drives me. I ask myself, like, what am I made for? I know what I can do. I know what I love to do, which is serve my clients and do some really cool accounting. But like, what am I here and what am I made for? And, I haven't had the easiest upbringing, but part of this whole what am I made for is I learned like, the experiences that I've had in my life and most specifically in my career have been hard and challenging as, a military wife, a mom of five, a very ambitious and bold individual. I reflected and said, I'm not really happy. I don't have the community that I want. Why do I feel the way that I feel about myself? And as I looked back, I learned like, I have gone through these instances of maybe toxic cultures that have created a bit of an imposter syndrome in myself. It took me 10 years to like launch my own firm. It took a really long time. People used to tell me in public accounting, you're not going to make it as a mom, right? I worked at a regional firm for several years, helped launch their CAS practice. And I said, hey, I don't believe that I need a CPA to do this type of work. I think I'm really great at it. I don't need it. I've met my business development goals. I've done all this. And they literally said, sorry, you can't have this position. You can't grow within the firm if you don't have a CPA license. And I was treated differently by people in accounting because I had that view. Fast forward a couple years working at big public accounting, right? Very competitive environment if you're not there 20 hours a day.
Yeah, yeah. So all of this, these things, couple things you just mentioned, you weren't maybe totally consciously aware of until after this accident, and you started reevaluating life. And then
1000%.
I mean, I can see that. That makes sense in the way of like you become maybe a bit more self-defensive because you're like, I have space to own because I made it. I'm alive. Where was I not holding my space? And I could see that, retroactively why this happened to you. So that's so interesting. So because of your accident, you started seeing what had happened to you previously and how it was wrong and what it added up to, and how it all fell under this category of workplace bullying.
Yeah, it's one of the things. There's a couple of things that came out of my like self-reflection period.
Okay.
And this was one of them. And the reason being is after my accident, there was a question that I asked myself is, am I proud of who I am? Am I proud of the things I've done? Am I proud of the relationships that I have? Am I, okay with the relationships that I don't have? And what I realized is that bullying had a personal impact on my life. I do believe in, looking back that I had bullish behavior.
Mm.
I might have thought that it was competitiveness. I might have thought that it was just get the project done. I think similarly, I've been in instances where I've been bullied. I have been hit with a door by a coworker. I've been screamed at on Zoom. There's been times of my life where maybe my responses weren't always that great, but then there were very significant times where I realized I'm not doing this. I took on a contract job right before my accident for about 2, 3 years, and I loved it. It was really great. But I had a manager who was a bully, yelled at me on Zoom, unrealistic timeline. I mean, he would come on a Zoom call and I would shake and turn red. And so part of my accident, kind of after, what I realized is I have these experiences and they're deep wounds. And part of my going forward is to educate people on how do you create a culture, an environment that makes this a zero tolerance, that you don't embody a leadership style that condones this type of workplace. And so, whether you want to call it workplace bullying or not, it's part of the big C, it's part of the big culture. So, as a business owner, as an employee, you have to make sure, right, that you know how to identify, how to work through these instances, even the bystander, right? How to, when you see something that's not right, to say something. Because again, someone could think it's competitive. That person could be going home and crying at night, going like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, right? It's all about perspective.
I just had a moment. I mean, we were even chatting before we actually hit record here. And I remember, I challenged you a little bit. I was like, this is interesting that you're putting this all under this umbrella term bullying. And I think you even said just now, like you did in our earlier conversation, you're like, who cares what we call it, right? But I would push back on you on that, and that this word is actually really important. And the reason why I had a light bulb moment while you were talking. How did I not realize this? I had a manager who was the biggest bully, and I would have never called him that. I had trouble getting pregnant working for him because he was so frightening. And I remember talking to he was kind of like a dotted line manager. Um, Within a week or two of starting this job, and him saying, "No, it's just normal to always think you're going to get fired." I'm like, "No,
Hmm?
no, why are you normalizing this?" So to your point, like the bully hit this dotted line manager being the bystander and not pushing back. In this instance, me being the bullied. Um, it's so funny. Here I experienced it, and I knew I didn't want to go back to that after having had a brand new baby. I knew I didn't want to leave a brand new baby for that environment. I mean, it's been 5 years, and I would have never called him a bully until this conversation.
That's the hard part about it, right? Most recently, I was in South Carolina talking to an amazing room of women at the Women Who Count conference. And during my presentation, I just said, look, let's just be real, right? How many of you have been faced with A, B, C, and D? I had a whole slide of just subtle signs. And more than half of the room raised their hand. And then I started to challenge that, like, do you feel great when that happens? Do you find value when that happens? Does that making you a better person? Does that make you think highly of that person?
I think for me, at least where I extrapolated this for me, and just a quick example, I went from that company. to another company, and then I came to Canopy. So I had a little stint in between. But I did not feel like you. I'm ambitious. I think most adults like feeling accomplished, like
Hmm.
a challenge, like completing things, like feeling competent. And I did not feel that way reporting to this gentleman. And as a result, my productivity dropped, my emotional health dropped. And then, flash forward 2 years to when I'm here at Canopy. I'd only been here, not to toot my own horn, but just to show that, like, the impact management and or I mean, he's my manager. You can be bullied by anybody. But the impact this kind of toxic environment can have on someone. I'd only been here for 9 months, and I was recognized as one of 3 employees of the year.
It's amazing.
And it just goes to show, like, what a healthy work environment can do for anyone's productivity. Whether you're, again, like, I really do think most adults want to do good work,
Hmm.
produce things, but we can so easily stifle the wonderfulness in our fellow humans if we succumb to these behaviors.
1000%. One thing that I left, or I really kind of preach now that came from my accident is this kind of unsilenced boldness as women. How
Mm,
many times when we speak up are we told that we're aggressive or we're too
yeah,
forward or we're too bold or we're going too fast, right? We're not seen at times as equal as our peers. And so, I left that room of women and I was like, you need to find your inner boldness. You need to be able to identify these situations, but also know that you never want to put that onto someone else, because exactly what you just said and how it affected you, from the person that's being bullied, that is a constant state of fear. If
yeah,
you're going into your job and you're scared that you're going to lose your job, there is something driving that.
mhm,
Now, I'm not saying that everyone who's fearful of losing their job is not doing a good job or is doing a good job. But most of the time, when we unpack these issues, we find that there's a toxic behavior, there's an environment, right? The big C is not working the way that it's expected to work. And I think as women, we face this more. Not to say that men aren't bullied and others, but I do feel that it is difficult. I mean, I'm a mom of five. I used to get introduced as a mom of five, like in a public accounting firm. All my accolades and things that I've done and the certifications that I have, it'd be like, yes, yeah, and Brittany's a mom of five and she leads our practice. It was like, why do we start with that? Like, there's no reason to start with that in any means. So one thing that I've learned that I have been coaching and helping people on is bringing in empathy and accountability into your culture. Empathy is not a weakness. It's often seen as a weakness, right? I can't have feelings. I can't ask about this. I can't do that. But I believe it's actually one of the strongest tools. And it's one of the things that since my accident, I mean, my empathy is like off the charts. I care very deeply about the person and the relationship. Like the work is just something really cool that we get to do together in an accounting firm. When people feel heard, they thrive. Uh, I have in my own firm now, am revamping that because I want people to feel heard. I want them to feel that they belong. I want them to love their job, their career, come in and do an amazing job. They don't need to come in and have a constant, state of fear. And separately, creating accountability, zero tolerance. Like, report it, you see it, you report it. You do it, you're going to go on a coaching plan, right? We need to make that space better. We need to not successfully promote those that have this behavior just because they might be good performers. They could be killing your culture.
yes. We talk on the podcast a lot about efficiencies, particularly, right? We've had conversations around evaluating your tech stack, AI, how you hire. This is like a secret hack to efficiencies as well. Like, it goes in the same theme of correct your culture, but particularly with this lens of taking this having this view, this examination, putting everybody under a little bit of a microscope of like, hey, how can we be better? And I hope a good microscope. I actually say that, and I was like, ugh, I didn't like that phrase, but you do that, and the efficiencies of your firm improve. But I like your point about to accountability, and that it really does need to be a top-down thing as well.
And if you're at the top and you don't recognize it, I would encourage firm owners,
Mm-hmm.
employees, everyone to really self evaluate your situation. I started off the beginning of this podcast talking about, right? I know what I love to do, but what am I made to do?
Mm.
I'm not made to wake up every day in a state of fear. I'm not
Yeah.
made to worry about my job. Um, I believe that everyone is born for greatness, and you just have to find the culture and find that group of people, unsilence that boldness and come forward as your authentic self. And with an empathetic leadership style and accountability, I do believe the firms can really nix this. Like, we shouldn't hear about this. I shouldn't be speaking to a room that's half full of women that are being faced. Create HR departments that are for the people, not just the business. Create a safe space for people so that they can come forward and you can work through it. I think I'm a good example of, I may have had bullish tendencies. Fast forward to now, I now recognize those. I know how those affect people. You can change. It's not like a one and done.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able, open and receptive to do it. And most of the time we find firm owners are, they're growing, they're understaffed. They're like, we just need to get the job done. Culture typically falls to the end of the line.
Yeah, which is so unfortunate because it's something that maybe even not maybe, I should take maybe completely out of that statement, is harder to change than software. And I know
Oh,
there is a huge aversion because I work for a company who tries to market software to accountants. And one of the things we try to address is change management a lot. But I think culture is so much harder to change than software.
1000%. It's people based,
Yeah.
right? There's feelings involved. There's, families at stake. There's businesses at stake, and depending
Mm,
on what value you're taking, I 1000% agree with you. Like,
yeah.
as someone who loves technology, most of the time when it disrupts me, I'm not too disrupted by it. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
this
not
evolution is
emotional.
understanding.
And when things are emotional, it gets so difficult to sift through and take that emotion out of it and be a logical human being. Um, so I have two questions. Um, and choose where you'd like to start, and maybe we can circle back to the other. I'm sure there's a spectrum, and you said you gave an example to that crowd in South Carolina. I'd love to hear some of these examples. And the other was, do you have a framework or a recommendation for a methodology or something that people can follow, a rubric where they can have a self-examination of their firm?
Yeah.
Whichever one you feel like you want to answer, go for it.
Gosh, let me start with the last one because really funny. I came up with an acronym that I thought was like really cool for this presentation that I did. That I was like, if I was to have people like have a takeaway on like, let's talk about how we break this cycle, right? And so the acronym is called CARE. And so C is communicate with empathy. A is align expectations and make sure they're clear expectations. R is resolve conflict when it arises. And E is empower the vulnerability. And I truly believe that this framework, from a business owner, a firm owner, from a culture standpoint, if you embed this into your culture, it can show up in so many different ways, right? Open door policies, how you communicate with your staff, showing empathy, tone at the top. I truly believe if you have these four pieces of framework, that you can change your culture and you can change it relatively quickly. Whether you gain back the full trust, that takes probably a little bit longer. But if you're communicating, if you're aligning your teams, if you're resolving those conflicts, creating that space of vulnerability, you're already halfway there. The biggest thing, though, is that you can't just create the space. You can't just say that you're going to hear it. You can't just take the grievance. You have to act on it.
Yeah.
Because those that receive the bullying or those that are the bystanders over time will start to doubt your culture. So I think question 2 first, that's kind of my take on, very high level, how we can help firms change this culture relatively quickly.
Yeah, and to your point, like you do need to hold the line. If you're going to follow through on this, you have to follow through. You can, I mean, trainings, right? Up leveling the team, doing it in such a way that it's like, hey, this is how we're pivoting our culture or improving our culture, however you want to pitch it, right?
Yep.
But then you have to have that follow up accountability. And what's hard is that even giving the staffing crisis that accountants are facing, it
Yes.
may still mean you need to let someone go. And if you
1,000.
don't, what you just said, uh, everything you've tried to do will be destroyed because it'll show that you're not willing to step up to the plate and follow through with what you're trying to incorporate into the firm culture. And that's hard.
1,000%. A good friend of mine, who I worked with a few years ago, said your do say ratio's got to align. What you say has got to be what you're doing. So if you're saying I have this culture and I have this vulnerability and we have empathy, however it may be, right? But if you're not doing those actions, it means nothing.
Yeah.
People walk away and go, your do say ratio doesn't work.
Which is
And to
why
your
we,
first
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
and so to your first question,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't even know that this is bullying. So what I like to say is, do you have these kind of subtle signs? And when you get many subtle signs in one, then someone usually will say that they feel bullied. They'll come to the conclusion of, I'm being bullied by this person, or, they're treating me differently. And they're really simple, and you may not even know them in the moment, right? So withholding information, undermining your work, micromanaging, constant changing expectations, unrealistic deadlines, exclusion from events, exclusion from meetings. It doesn't have to be someone screaming at you or yelling at you or hitting you with a door, right? It can be a series of events that happen over time that will make a person feel that they're being mistreated, and call that whatever you want. Call it bullying, call it intimidation, call it misrepresentation, like whatever you want to call it. They are going to come to the conclusion after enough of those instances to say, well, this sucks. Like, I don't like this. This is not great. And to your point, I'm trying to do a good job. Why is it not being perceived that way? And so then it creates that constant state of fear. So as a firm owner, as anyone who has employees, as an employee yourself, I think it's important to know the subtle signs and don't do them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you've identified subtle signs. You've trained the firm. You're towing the line. Um, that's the firm. Because there's another angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the clients, our dear
Ugh,
clients, who,
client.
for the most part, every accountant I talk to, I love my clients. And you've said it, I love serving my clients. But there is always some portion of clients who are not fun to work with, who are rude, what do you do?
Oh, this question gives me chills because what you just said is so true. And most firm owners that are smaller, usually, they keep, you know, the DEF clients. Like, they've got some AB clients that are really great and they're awesome and they align with their values. And then you've got clients that, don't fit that. We fell victim to that in probably our first 2 years. We were like, take on anyone and everyone. We want to help the world. Not from a like, we just want to go do everything, but it was like, we are so excited. We're going to go help every client. And if you have an issue, I'll figure it out, right? We're all kind of detectives and critical thinkers. Um, it wasn't about until 3 years in at Ledgerly that I said, this feels gross. Sometimes we're getting value. Sometimes the clients see the value. Other times our team feel valued. They don't feel valued. It was this big like melting pot of emotions. So what I can say from the client perspective is, as a firm owner, make sure that you have your values in line, because your values will allow you to determine where and what is most important. And second, create your detractor and your attractor lists. So those have transformed our firm. So we had a client very recently that was not speaking well to our team, and our team said, "Hey, this is kind of uncomfortable. Their emails are short, they're brash, at times maybe really rude and manipulative." We emailed that person, and we said, "Hey, our values are really rooted in relationship and accuracy. So we want to do a really good job, but we really do care about you." I mean, we tell clients in an onboarding call, if you only want transactional services, we are not the firm for you. Because our team, they want to talk, they want to know why, they want to help you. This client responded with, "This is who I am, this is how I talk. I will not change who I am for you, and I hired you to do a service." Needless to say, 1 week later, I wrote an email that said, "I don't think that we're the fit for you. I don't think that we are going to meet your expectations, and it's not a good fit, and that's okay. And so I will help you figure this out. We'll have a meeting, we'll talk about it. Let's figure out what next steps are." Brittany 3 years ago wouldn't have done that. I would have kept the revenue just so I could say, like, I've got the client, I've got the revenue, I'm continuing to grow. Now we're growing with intentionality. That is, decisions are made by values, and we want to work with our attractor list, not our detractor list.
Yeah.
And we've created this culture of, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, we're creating a culture truly that's people first. And so for us, if you can't communicate, then okay, that's fine. We're just not the fit for you.
Yeah. It made me think that maybe the quickest pulse check you or anyone in your firm could do to check for this is, are you feeling fear? And if so, from who?
Mm-hmm.
Because you shouldn't have that. Fear is not a response intrinsic to us. It's responsive to some external factor, and identifying the external factor will help you identify, okay, well, what's the problem to be solved? But the fear here, which I hear this fear a lot in accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to get enough clients? Am I going to have enough revenue? Am I going to be profitable? I have to keep them, even though they're no, like, yeah.
Yeah, I know so many accountants that are bullied by their clients. "I called you and you didn't call me right back. I emailed you on Saturday and I didn't hear back from you." Or, I mean, the 8:59 emails in the morning, like, "Hey, I responded last night, but I haven't heard from you this morning." So many clients can be bullies. And look, I'm not saying that as accounting firms, we need to control how our clients act, but there's enough clients in the world to make you successful. And so, how are you going to spend your day?
Yeah.
That's what drove our niche now. So, we found through our values, through these questions, through these hard times, that we want to help nonprofits. We found that we very closely align from a value perspective with mission-driven organizations. And so one of our largest niches is nonprofit. And our team, their cup is filled. So like you said, there is no fear. They're excited to work on
And
these clients. Like,
they
it's
do
a
more.
different game changer.
They humans can thrive and do more in less time, believe it or not, when we're healthy. And not just physically healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, not in a state of flight, or fight. Or freeze. I guess that's a new one that I've heard. Fight, flight, or freeze. Like,
Right.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people talk about, well, just make sure you have work-life balance. You know, I think I said it earlier in the podcast, and I'll say it again. If you are in an environment at work that is extremely toxic, it's going to seep into your personal life.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a rough and hard personal life, that is going to seep into your day activities, whatever that is, right? And so, to your point, it's very, very important for us to recognize that we, as accountants, are a human-based service infused and powered by technology.
Mm.
I'm a firm believer that if you're hiring a CPA firm, you are looking for human connection, human understanding, communication. Sure, you're going to get the technology. Maybe some firms can do things faster or slower, or they have this fancy tool. That's great. And I think as accountants, we need to continue embracing, but we need to not lose sight of the fact that we are so successful. We will be here time and time again because there's people that are needed to communicate this to others. And so when we mistreat our people, whether that's a client or internally,
Or
you're just
or
hurting your firm.
yeah, whether we or the bystander, your point, like depending on the role,
Yep.
we're watching it happen. Like you being the bystander as a firm owner and letting clients bully your employees. Oh, I honestly, even at the beginning of this conversation, after you told me what you wanted to talk about, I've had so many light bulbs. I'm like, I didn't realize, and for myself, but also like the great application this really truly does have to the accounting industry. And I hope listeners have had similar light bulbs, or maybe they were like, Casey, get with the program. We already know what Brittany's talking about. But thank you again, Brittany. This was so enlightening. And I hope this saves some people because we're not, to your point, made to live in fear, wherever that fear is coming from.
I agree. I hope the stories that you and I shared today that someone goes, I'm not alone. And I'm here to tell you,
Yeah.
you're not alone. Google me. We'll have a talk about it because you shouldn't feel that way. You should not
And
have to go through this.
that there are options. Like, don't let the
1000%.
fear take so much control over you that you don't see that tomorrow has endless opportunities. That this is not the only thing that will get you through life. That you are a valuable human with great things to offer, and the environment you're in is not letting you operate optimally.
Couldn't have said it better.
Ugh, thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. It's good seeing you.